you remember that they're changing my voice. So, again, I would like to point out that we should be discussing these things. Yes, I am who I say that I am. I've been persecuted my whole life, especially the last 16 years or so, the last 14 years, with a greater emphasis on the last 8 years or so. I know for sure that if people come to the table and discuss things with me, that it's better for everybody. Every nation on this planet. Israel, America, you name it. So let's talk about ancient Egypt really briefly here. Let's talk about the difference between a theocracy and a state that has a bunch of different cultures that are allowed to exist. Egypt in the Old Kingdom, in the first intermediate period, and in the Middle Kingdom, etc., was a place where there was various cults there, various religions, as far as anyone knows. It's a good point of reference when we look at what it appears to be and what it must have been, what it appears to have been and what it must have been. It's a good point of reference to understand how things should be playing out in Israel and Gaza. Not because of whatever pagan religion the pharaohs may or may not have had, but because the idea of justice. That Horus is the idea of justice. To the Egyptians, the Messiah of all mankind was called, whatever word they use for Horus is a Greek word for maybe Haru. They have different theories about what they used to call. And so this idea of justice expressing itself through Pharaoh as Pharaoh resolved conflicts. A tradition that continued in the African martial art traditions through the transatlantic slave trade, even into the Western world, all over the world, in various places, in various ways. However, they are not in the divine order. Only I am. So how would this problem be solved? Well, we'll look at the facts here. Now, where do the facts come from? Facts are hard to come by. We can't trust the colleges, Al Jazeera. We can't trust the IDF. We can't trust Hamas. We can't trust Iran. We can't trust CNN, Fox. We can't trust anybody because they're all compromised. But that doesn't mean we just do nothing. When we look at it scientifically, we can't say for certain that the methodologies that are being used by these groups is fair and valid and genuine and sincere. Their process is a joke, frankly. But in the midst of their failure, we still have evidence of things. We can still start to piece things together. It's like a sick jigsaw puzzle that they're playing. But the righteous leader, the idea of a righteous Pharaoh in Egypt, like the one in the Bible who elevated Joseph in the story, can look at the situation and say, this is what should be done. As opposed to a theocracy where people are supposed to have one religion and the king enforces it, like Asa in the Old Testament, when he removed the pagan religions and insisted that people worship the one true God. So how should we address this problem? Well, first of all, Pharaoh, right? It's right there in the word fair. Pharaoh is an impartial judge. What is right to do is for everyone to obey God through his representative, me. But when we're looking at a secular nation, where the strategy may very well be to allow people to have their religions, that may very well be what God wants based on what's going on for the time being. One has to say, okay, what is fair here? Because they're not doing what is right. None of them are choosing universal pinpoint and moral precision. They've chosen their own ways and their own beliefs, their own nations, their own organizations, their own social order, not the order of God. No offense to anybody, other than the offense that God intended. So what must happen is an immediate ceasefire. Ideally, the UN would take control over both the government of Israel and of Palestine, which I know is something that seems outrageous to many Israelis. But the government of Israel has never done a good job. There's little things here and there they've done, but they've never done a good job. In fact, that's true with the governments of all the governments of the world. But I'm going to assume that's ideally, but it's not what we would expect for them to go for. What they probably would go for, at least seriously consider, is a full withdrawal from Palestine and have UN troops there instead. And an immediate release of all hostages, and for lots and lots of aid to flood in immediately. This should have happened a long time ago. Why didn't it happen? Because you people were the ones trying to resolve the conflict from your positions, from your secular and worldly positions, instead of me giving my rightful place and the reverent power that comes with it. The power to have every person on this planet respect me, even those people who are racist. They unwittingly or otherwise respect me. They begrudgingly or otherwise respect me. And they will respect the divine verdict from the court of God through me. And the divine verdict is the war should stop immediately. It must stop immediately. And there are consequences when people don't obey God. Some of them you can detect immediately. You can see it in people as their conscience weighs heavy on them, as they turn to drugs and alcohol and psychology to try to avoid their conscience from beating them down, symbolically and figuratively and spiritually. Wickedness burns like a fire. One thing I want to talk about briefly, because I know that it has to be said, I know it's very controversial. I apologize if I should apologize for the frustration it may cause. If in Nazi Germany there was a guard who was making fun of a bunch of Jews who were in prison, and they were raping their wives, and they were drinking their wine and bragging about how they have their jewelry and their money, and those Jews found a way out of that prison, and they grabbed a few of them and they beat the dog shit out of them and hung them upside down and beat them with a bat for hours and then slit their throat. Is it barbaric to some degree? Yeah. But is it fair to some degree? You got to really search your soul and ask yourself, is that fair? I shouldn't have to explain to any of you what the parallels are here. Is Hamas in the spirit of God? No. Are the IDF? No. Was October 7th a war crime according to international law? Yes. But should some group of people or should an individual just continually be abused day in and day out, living in an open-air prison? Lord knows what biological warfare takes place, what chemical warfare, what bacteriological warfare takes place. The sexual assaults on the inmates. Should they just take abuse day in and day out? Well, in a world where neocolonialism degrades the whole planet, people argue that it's a war between civilization and barbarism. It's a war between neocolonialism and the victims who, after they've been abused for a long time, they start becoming like rabid dogs at times, some of them at least. It's a war between people who are sick and people who are sick. Or rather, people who are sick and people who are sicker. A great injustice occurs when we look at that situation and we chop it up to, that's just a war crime, that's all there is to it. Another injustice is when we chop it up to, well, Israel's the only one to blame. We see that all the players on the global stage, all the people who have the power to stop that war are to blame. The government of America, the internationalists, the international financiers, the globalists, the corporations that influence it. The governing class of the world are basically white, Jewish, and LGBT, where there's token minorities. A lot of powerful Asians, some powerful people from Saudi Arabia, what have you. You got to look at it for what it is and have the courage to say what it is. Right now, Israel has one major problem that is far more serious than any other problem they have. And that is their spiritual inadequacy. That is that their souls are rotting while they're doing the wrong thing, while they reject me as the Messiah. October 7th is peanuts compared to that. What happens to people who die outside the divine order? You're going to let your pride damn the souls of your families? And so it is with every country in the world. But how far do they go to say that they're chosen? You've allowed your greed and your hatred to overcome you, just like the so-called white man in popular culture, where even in his language, the word agreed has a letter A for alpha, and then the second part of the word is greed. Why would you agree to make your alpha greed? Now, as we look at crony capitalism and we look at communism, are they not systems of greed and lies and deceit, where moral precision is ignored? Since when have the civilizations that you're citing ever been civilizations that were run by anything other than wickedness and greed and everything unclean? See Matthew 23. I invite all the Jews to obey God through me while there's still time, and to see Matthew 23 and Mark 7. Was Jesus as a character in the story right, or was the Pharisees? Are you full of hypocrisy and greed and everything unclean as a result of dedicating yourself to propaganda and illusion and deceit? Or are you truly honoring God? Is your worship of God in vain? Or do you love God with all of your heart, which is the greatest commandment? You don't need to read the New Testament to understand that. So as you look at this situation, I urge you all to carefully consider the motives, right? It says in the Proverbs, the Lord weighs the heart. He weighs the motives. People are tested by their action-based praise. Actions speak louder than words. Surely you must all know why I insist on my rightful place. It's not out of greed. It's not to lord things over people. It's because it's the right thing to do. You don't have to try to seem equal to me spiritually to have a fulfilling life. Do what is right, and you'll have a fulfilling life. God rewards the righteous for their righteousness and deals with them according to their righteousness. And I'm dealing with you all according to your actions, to your deeds, that reflect how much faith you have and how much loyalty to God that you have. And even the agnostic must know that as God is the center of universal pinpoint and moral precision to the monotheist, that I'm dealing with people according to how morally precise they are, which requires the monotheistic martial art principles in their true form. And I'm not talking about punching and kicking and things of that nature. I'm talking about timing and maturity and heart and wisdom and insight and righteousness and discernment and prudence, diligence and perseverance, endurance. These sorts of principles. Focus. Love. So I ask you all, what would the wise man do in this situation? Would he do what I've done in this video, for example? Or would he just take sides like a fool with one of the worldly combatants or group of worldly combatants? I'm on God's side. In order for you to truly be on the side of your peoples and your groups that you claim to care about, you must also be on God's side.